For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, everybody. Asia Pacific markets actually reacting is exactly you would probably think they would after those better than expected US inflation figures yesterday. I'll come on to those in a moment. It could be a false dawn, who knows? This is what's really going for the markets. Japan is closed for a holiday today. Hong Kong, therefore, up about almost 2%. Mainland China also ticked up very, very slightly indeed. The Shanghai Composite gaining about 1%. Beijing has been putting some new restrictions on Taiwan as a result of Nancy Pelosi's visit there about a fortnight ago. People have been doing calculations about this. Actually, it's only affecting about 0.04% of their trade, but this is suspensions of imports of Taiwanese citrus, frozen fish, sweets, biscuits, and exports of natural sands, which are affecting particularly natural sands, affecting the construction business in Taiwan a little. But these trade restrictions are very, very small indeed. I merely quote that as it's good. It's a good thing to keep one's eyes on these things as an ongoing process rather than actually drawing any conclusions right now. Also, car makers like VW, Peugeot, Fiat Chrysler and Jeep are looking for other partnerships outside China for their battery plans. Raw material costs are rising. China is beginning to dominate the downstream applications of electric vehicle batteries, and these companies are now rapidly trying to get partnerships, for example, with LG and Samsung, to just two of them, to try to avoid China's domination of that particular trade. So let us therefore go to the United States and see what effect that had. The inflation figures had, as expected, soaring to the S&P 500, soaring to its highest level in 3 months. Dow futures ticking higher as well. A slowdown in rising prices. S&P and all of them gaining yesterday, as you'd expect. 8.5% year on year as opposed to 8.7%, which economists actually affected, and core inflation too. Now, let's not get carried away with this. I quote you the San Francisco Fed Governor, Mary Daly, who's saying it's far too early to say that the fight against inflation has been actually won. And also, I happen to think that if you look at today's PPI numbers in the United States, you're going to get a better indication of what's happening to core inflation, because that's really the most important thing once you've stripped out housing and energy costs and so on. Here's some good news for those who invested in Disney. In the 2 years since they've been on the block as far as streaming is concerned, they have just overtaken Netflix. Netflix now has 220 million subscribers. Disney has 221 million subscribers. And their reach to that sort of level has been much, 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 much more quick than Netflix over the past 20 years. So shares up nearly 6%, Disney shares on the result of that yesterday. And it's also very significant, this, because Disney Plus is going to introduce a second tier advertising supported level of being able to watch these movies and so on. And this is really important, because if you remember a couple of months ago, maybe it was just a month ago, we were looking at Netflix and wondering, how is the business model actually faring as a result of not charging for advertising? Well, Disney is going to start doing that. An important milestone for Boeing. It's delivered its first 787 Dreamliner since those manufacturing floors stopped, or at least halted deliveries in 2021. It's gone to American Airlines, and it is being seen as a milestone as far as the company is concerned. Staying with flying, I'm going to bring you now to the European Union, and Michael O'Leary, the boss of Ryanair, is saying that the era of these €10 flights is now over. The average fare now will be around €40, but the thing is, what he's not saying is that any people, that there's still this pent up demand. People are still wanting to fly, if nothing else, to see friends and relatives, as he puts it. So that's where one of the cheaper operators actually thinks that at least the European airline business is actually going. To the UK and energy groups, I mentioned that the for now, Chancellor and for now, Business Secretary are meeting energy giants. They're meeting them today. What they're going to say to them is, look, unless you guarantee that you'll be putting some of your windfall profits towards green energy investment, then we will give you a windfall tax. In other words, it's a pretty easy thing for the energy giants to actually grasp. It is, of course, a continuing problem in this country. UK supermarkets are being criticised by one of the motoring organisations, the Royal Automobile Club, the RAC. I did actually talk about this about a week ago, but this is about the drop in wholesale fuel prices, not in wholesale oil prices, but in wholesale fuel prices. And the RAC are saying that if the supermarkets, who tend to control most of the forecourts in the country, actually are now selling for £1.76 a litre. It should be nearer £1.62 pence a litre, again, which is a considerable saving as far as motorists are concerned. I happen to think that those pump prices and all the cost of living things, including supermarket shelves, are the most important indicator, never mind the official inflation figures and the rest of it. As far as the UK leadership battle is concerned, it's still between Truss and Sunak, as far as we know. What she is now saying, Liz Truss is now saying, is that, and this is being said to be a U-turn by Sunak supporters, obviously. What she's saying is she does want to give some kind of individual help to individual householders. Her plan at the moment, as you know, is to cut taxes. But what Sunak's lot are saying is that the poor don't pay any tax. So what's the point of cutting tax? It actually is a serious political and moral misjudgment, and so this battle of words goes on. To be perfectly honest, it would be very nice to have somebody governing the country in these times of crisis, which one market commentator is saying the cost of living crisis is worse than the pandemic, more threatening for the UK economy. And finally, I won't just deal with the day-to-day oil price because it tends to go up and down. I just want to draw to your attention, over the last 2 months, both Brent and WTI, West Texas Intermediate, are down about 20% since June. So in other words, the wholesale cost of oil is gradually coming down as well. And a lot of that's about demand. It's a little bit about Russian supply. It's a little bit about where we are as far as the United States supply is concerned. But anyway, oil prices on the way down for the moment. That is the global view.
Thank you, Michael. It is a really brutal war of words and protracted because this leadership contest goes on until next month, and I think the damage is going to be appalling. You just quoted the Sunak camp talking about moral and political misjudgment. This is the kind of language that one would expect from Labour, who have been silent in the face of all of this. Gordon Brown has been more vocal than Keir Starmer. What's that about? At least the Lib Dems piped up with like an energy furlough. Neither of us was terribly impressed with that, but at least they had something to say. What is Keir Starmer doing? Back to Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown is saying, and I want your take on this, that energy firms who do not lower bills for the consumer should be renationalized, like it happened during the banking crisis of 2009 to protect the consumer. What's your take on that? And also there's a petition that's been started off the back of what Gordon Brown has posited, that the energy cap should be cancelled, and that petition has 50,000 signatures.
All right, let me tell you about the banking crisis and Gordon Brown first of all, because I was actually there commentating on this minute by minute as it was happening. And the bottom line was that the Treasury, of which he was there, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, was actually saying, look, we need an answer for when the markets open at 7 o'clock this morning. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning. We need an answer for 7 o'clock. What is it going to be? What are we actually going to do? So it was really, there was nothing else to do. They had to put money as far as that's concerned. Would nationalisation of the power companies actually help? I don't necessarily think it would, because who's to say that if they were nationalised, therefore the power is in the hands of the taxpayers, and would taxpayers approve the kind of things that oil companies have to do right now in order to survive? They've got to drill where all the easy stuff's gone. The hard stuff is still there, but it involves an enormous amount of investment and so on. Is there going to be resentment about the amount of money that the taxpayer would therefore have to pay to turn from fossil fossil fuels to green energy by whatever target politics. I can't even remember what it is now. What is it? 2030, 2040? Who cares? It's so far ahead and so far away, nobody really understands it. And I would not take any lessons from Gordon Brown, and this is not a political statement, this is a purely economic one, about the economy at the moment, because what he did was, if you remember, he sold our gold at an absolute knockdown price at the time. He also increased taxes because he felt that was increased taxes on dividends hugely, which meant that everybody's pensions got a lot less, and merely for the sake of a bit of social engineering. So I would not take any lessons whatsoever from Gordon Brown. He's not wrong. He's not wrong to criticise, but I don't think nationalisation is the way. I think what you've got to do is you've got to take a long-term view. Well, you've got to take two views. Number one, long-term, which is exactly what it appears as though Zahawi and Kwasi Kwarteng are going to be talking about today, which I just reported on. In other words, going to the international, going to the power companies and saying you must invest for the future, which is in green. Otherwise, you'll face a windfall tax. But once a windfall tax is done, it's done. I happen to feel this kind of long term is much better in the long run.
But one thing you can't fault Gordon Brown for, that he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer that prevailed over a very, very successful time for your country. And you can't beat New Labour about that. If only the Tories had half the level of success Labour had, probably they will not be going around in circles like they are now. Moving on, I'd like to talk about business plan and business model. What is it that Disney has done? Is it just the war of catalogs? What is it that Disney has done over Netflix? Because this growth is something we should study. Is Astronomical in space of 2 years getting that level of subscribers?
Star Wars.
Oh my God. Something else.
It's Star Wars.
Well, it is. I'll take. I say I don't want to talk politics. I just add to your comments about Gordon Brown. What Gordon Brown actually said, and I was there at the time. I remember it quite distinctly because I used to do regular interviews with him. He said he would get rid of the Tory cycle of boom and bust. He did not. Right? After a boom, there was the banking crisis, and after the banking crisis, he drew every budget that he used to have. The trajectory of the economy changed to suit what the Labour Party actually wanted then. That's not running an economy. That's actually taking a sort of command view of it. So please, I don't want to talk politics, but that, from an economic point of view, is what happened to this country. As far as Disney's concerned, well, it looks, I mean, their growth, as you quite rightly observe, has been astronomical. They have achieved in 2 years what took Netflix, I think, 10 years to achieve. I feel as though it's all about content, and I don't know. I don't watch it myself, so I don't really know, and I don't know what the secrets of Disney is. But if I were them, I'd be looking at content, and I think they are the first, as I observed, the first company to actually say, do you know what, we're going to have an ad-based tier, and I think that's going to be really, really important as we go forward. So, good luck for the shareholders of Disney.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson. Why would energy companies opt for tax rather than invest in green energy? Perhaps you need to shed some more light on that. And the Labor Department in the US reporting consumer price index year on year staying the same. And of course, for the month of July, going down to 8.5 from 9.1 in June, as inflation peaked and may just be coming down soon in the US.
Yeah, so, well, as I said, the United States, yes, they have, it looks like inflation is coming down, but the core inflation is certainly very, very sticky indeed. That's the first thing to look at. That's why I said that today you should be looking at the PPI figures, which are the Producer Prices Index figures, which actually look forward rather than looking backwards. Is it working? I don't know. The governor of the Federal Reserve in San Francisco, Mary Daly, says don't read too much into one set of figures. I couldn't agree more. I feel as though what she's also saying is it may be that the Fed doesn't have to raise rates so aggressively. So I feel as though a bit of caution over these kind of figures. The market basically is looking for any kind of excuse. And what you've got to think about, as far as the market's concerned, is the return on what people are getting out of equities. They're getting much more return than people are actually getting in cash. That's why the stock market went up yesterday. So answer, do not read too much into those kind of figures either way.
The Star Wars franchise is the best investment Disney ever made. Both for their parks, stop laughing, Rufai, you know it's true. Both for their parks and for the streaming. Star Wars is the greatest movie franchise of all time. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson.